Okay, awesome. It looks like the number of participants has stabilized a little bit, so I think we're going to get started. Again, welcome. As Cassie mentioned, thank you all again for being here for this fantastic panel of alumni who have graciously given part of their day to speak with us about their experience in startups and entrepreneurship. My name is Sophia, and I'll be moderating the conversation today together with Prina. Prina, would you like to quickly introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Prina. I'm class of 2026 at Northwestern, currently a sophomore studying neuroscience and global health. Nice to meet you all.
All right, wonderful. We have a great lineup of alumni speakers today to share their insights with the group. Once we hear from them for about 40 or so minutes, we'll take questions from the audience. So students, if you want to turn your mic on to ask your question, please submit your question via the public chat tab, and we'll call on you to ask your question. If you'd like us to read the question out to you instead, out to the panelists instead, feel free to send Prina a private chat. And I'll also put these instructions in the chat since it'll be a while until we get to the student questions. Okay, awesome. Without further ado, let's get started with introductions. So can Shrina get us started?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Shrina Amin. It's nice to meet you all and see all your faces. I'm a product exec, a former founder, and an angel investor. I've led product at 3 different tech companies with successful exits. One was my own startup, 2 acquisitions by publicly traded companies, and most recently, initial coin offering in the crypto space. Today, I lead product management teams at early stage and/or high growth startups. And a lot of you might be wondering, what is product? So product is a function, typically within a tech company, that figures out what to build, how to build it, and then goes ahead and executes on that. It's at the intersection of design and user experience, which is figuring out what do customers want, engineering, what is technically feasible, and business, what is profitable. So my path to this career was very, very nonlinear. I started my career back in investment banking way back when. After that, I worked in politics, I worked in the public sector, and tried a bunch of different stuff and learned a lot about what I liked and what I didn't like. But ultimately went back to business school. When I was at business school, started a tech company, knowing nothing about building tech companies or tech products, but got to learn on the ground and make a lot of mistakes along the way. To figure out basically how to, answer those 3 questions: what to build, what's technically feasible, and what's profitable, and got some practice doing it, and then did it at bigger and bigger companies over time.
Wonderful. Thank you. Let's go to Tyler.
Hey everybody, nice to meet you. Yeah, I guess I'll start my intro with what I share with you all, which is going to Northwestern. So I graduated in 2010. I was an econ and MMSS major. And then kind of similar to, let me make sure I say it right, Shrina's story. I actually I recruited for both investment banking and management consulting, and went to Accenture after school. Only lasted there for 18 months, and actually within 6 months was trying to figure out how to quit and start a company. And so that took another year from that 6-month mark till 18 months to get some capital raised and eventually quit. You've never heard of the company that I founded to start, because we shut it down and shut down 2 other products that we launched. So from 2012 to 2015, started, built, and launched 3 different products that didn't work. Kind of similar to Shrina also. Learned along the way how to listen better, I think I would put it. Along the way, ran out of capital, sold software projects to other companies to keep the lights on. And eventually we figured out something that would work, largely by listening to customers. So ended up building a restaurant technology company called Wisely. We sold software to restaurants that did a number of things, from operations like waitlist reservations to customer database and marketing software. And we sold that company in 2021 in November to a company called Olo. And I spent about 18 months there and left in March of this year and have been semi-retired since then. So I have 2 young kids, 5 and 2. I've been hanging out with them most of the summer. But back to my ride at Wisely. Really wore a bunch of hats, but Trina kind of covered what product is. I ended up in the product suite as well and was chief product officer as we built and scaled that product for those 5 years. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was definitely great to hear more about your path to entrepreneurship. Can we have Jin introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Jin Huang, class of 2001. So I think I'm the oldest person here, which is kind of sad for me, but I'm happy to share my story. When I graduated, and I graduated with a degree in economics, I actually did not know what I wanted to do. But my parents were kind of keeping me in buckets and kind of advising me pretty heavily. So I started my career path in finance, started in corporate banking and transitioned to investment banking. Did not like that life. It was too transactional and really wanted to figure out what I wanted to do. So, very similar to Shrina, when I went to business school, I had an opportunity to actually speak with startup founders, and they really inspired me. I was actually just doing pro bono coursework where I was helping them directly. And they inspired me to kind of, look at the world and see if there's like a problem that needed to be solved or something that I really needed to see exist in the world and solve other people's problems. And so I ended up working, but also moonlighting the idea until I quit my job and went full bore into building a real-time search engine. Similar to Tyler, you'll never hear of it because it was a sad failure after 3 years. But I put everything I had into it, saved up and literally put everything I had into it. Had the most debt I've ever seen in my life after my startup baby died in Chicago. And it was actually one of the 10 inaugural startups at 1871. So I actually do have some old school history of like what the Chicago tech community was like back then. Even Catapult Chicago, there were like 5 startups then, hung out with those guys too. So really early days, I guess. And so post that, I moved to San Francisco, building a startup. You end up just networking, getting to know other people, like-minded folks. And so the friends that I made there in the Valley kind of convinced me to move. And so I did. But San Francisco being a ridiculously expensive city for a post-failure startup founder, I needed to find a job. So that's actually the first time I experienced product management. I'm very happy that Trina kind of outlined very well just like what product management is. But I just figured, wearing all these hats as a startup founder, it made the most sense to be a product manager. It was like the most analogous role, I guess. And so I joined Prosper Marketplace. It's a consumer lender. It was one of the early P2P lenders, even before Lending Club, if you've heard of it. Kind of made my way up through the ranks, getting more and more responsibility. It's, really the name of the game is kind of successful projects begets more trust, trust begets more responsibility. And so that's kind of how I work my way up to be a principal product manager there. Then got recruited at Intuit, got to lead a project called QuickBooks Capital, which actually became the basis for QuickBooks Money. And so it's small business lending. And now it's one of the main business verticals at Intuit. And then from there, I got recruited at Goldman Sachs, built up Marcus by Goldman Sachs. Plenty of stories to share about that too. But I left as the head of platform, basically head of product for platform. And so what you see in terms of platform solutions today at Goldman Sachs is a lot of the work that I had done with my team. Then got recruited to a company called Fundbox, which is a Series D startup as a chief product officer. Had a short stint there. Many stories to tell you about that too. And then most recently, I've joined a company called Stadia Technologies, which is a pre-A startup, so very lean, kind of revisiting all of the first kind of product management projects that I've been doing. So doing a little bit of individual contributor work, but also helping build the company with just 36 people at the moment. So that's where I am. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you so much. Yeah, I think it's interesting that you mentioned like deciding to switch from finance to entrepreneurship after hearing someone speak about that, because I guess that's kind of similar to what we're doing today. I think a lot of students like me are also trying to figure out the career paths, and it's great to get more information and perspective from these alumni. All right, so our last moderator is, our last panelist is Aaliyah. Do you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Alia. It's nice to meet you all and a pleasure to be here. I'm class of 2011. So similar to the other panelists, it's a non-linear trajectory into startups often. I left Northwestern with a history major, really not knowing what I wanted to do. I had ruled out teaching and law pretty early, and actually moved to San Francisco to pursue winemaking, because somewhere along the lines I was like, that's what I want to do. And so I spent 2 years in the food and beverage industry. But San Francisco in like 2011, 2012 was a really high energy. It had a ton of momentum around the startup industry. And I actually had a bunch of friends who I met at in my freshman seminar at Northwestern who had gotten into tech as engineers, as most primarily engineers. And I really got excited about just the passion, the energy. Everyone felt like they were doing something that was impactful and interesting that they loved. And it was hard to not be a part of that. So I in a sense, kind of forced my way into UX design by teaching myself how to code and teaching myself kind of the principles around design, and then lucked out with my first job at a mobile gaming company. It was a first job, is what I would describe a mobile gaming company as, and quickly moved to a different role in another food-oriented startup. And so worked in maybe 5 or 6 failing startups. And then 5 years ago, decided to start a waste and recycling startup out of Seattle. We've been going for 5 years. It is now the biggest company I've worked at before, which is kind of a fun thing to be doing. But there are challenges at every stage. And at this point, I'm, as the co-founder, I did everything. I did our customer service, I did our design, I did our website, I did our marketing, and now we're finally at the stage where I can focus. And it's interesting to me that we're all kind of product-oriented people. So I now lead the product engineering, design, and a little bit of like central operations and business operations. But as you'll probably learn as co-founders, you do whatever you got to do. And so my day varies a lot. But I enjoy the firefighting. One day, maybe I'll grow out of that.
All right, thank you so much. We really appreciate your insight. And let's see, yeah, I think it would be a great place to start if we could see maybe how you guys spent your time at Northwestern and how that impacted your future trajectory. Our first question is, what were some of the impactful classes or experiences for you in school that sort of led you to consider and pursue like getting into the startup and entrepreneurship space? And we can start just in the same order with Shrina.
So I would say it probably wasn't one class in particular. I was a psychology and econ major. There's some parallel themes between all the speakers here. But I'd say, before I even realized it, like when I chose to study those things, and then after I studied those things, I was always really, really interested, I guess, in human behavior and how do people think, both individually and in groups, and how can you study that and understand that? And I think that baseline education, both from a psych and econ perspective, has really, really impacted my approach to entrepreneurship and to building products. I've focused mostly in my career on consumer products, a lot of mobile apps, and then also marketplaces. And in both of those things, like really understanding how people think and how we as human beings are flawed in how we make decisions and how we're not rational has really informed how I think about designing products. And it served me well, from a simple things of like, be really thoughtful about the design choice, or the choices that you offer someone. The less choices they have, the more likely they are to make a decision and move forward. What are all the little things that add friction in a user flow? And so that psych and econ background served me well. And then I'd say the other thing is just really taking classes that are were outside my major and had nothing to do with what I was studying. My favorite class at Northwestern was Russian Lit, and it was, you know, again, in a different angle, a story about human behavior and understanding how people think. And I think when you're working with other colleagues, co-founders, or thinking about your customers, just understanding how people think is really gonna serve you well.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. I think it's definitely great to really head into that sort of intersectionality and have a lot of different information from different backgrounds. All right, can we go to Tyler?
Yeah, definitely. So I'll maybe say two things in terms of experiences on campus that were impactful toward becoming an entrepreneur. One was an organization that I think is still around, but I'm not sure. It was called Northwestern Student Holdings. And so I got involved with NSH as a junior. And at the time, there were a few businesses. So the idea of, does NSH still exist? Can someone tell me? No, it doesn't sound like it. Yes. Okay. Nice. All right, Stella. Thank you. So at the time, the businesses were a mix. There was a tutoring business that was helping high school kids in the area. And then this dates myself quite a bit, but there was a business called Wildcat Express Delivery. There was no DoorDash and no Uber Eats and nothing, but Wildcat Express Delivery would get you a Chipotle burrito and deliver it to your dorm at the time. So there were a number of businesses, and then what I came on and started doing was actually like a startup idea competition. So we were sourcing ideas from freshmen and sophomores that wanted to get involved, and what became clear to me was that just the energy around building businesses and talking to people about business ideas was very fun. And when it came to coursework and NSH work, I found myself tilting toward wanting to do work on the NSH stuff. So that was it wasn't a big surprise to me because my dad was an entrepreneur and I always kind of enjoyed building businesses, or thought I would. And so I confirmed that belief. So that was one. If you feel that itch, I would say NSH, or I know there's a lot more on campus now with the garage, but like go out and try it. And then two, the other thing I would pay attention to is things that felt like work. So I was in the Kellogg Financial Certificate Program, and I was learning about stock market or like options theory and how to balance a portfolio, all of which was interesting, but quite frankly, it felt like work. And so there's something in there that told me that like that's not what I want to spend the rest of my life on. So I think it's as important to realize the things that you're spending time on that don't feel like they're giving you energy. That might tell you what not to go into as a profession. If you have the privilege and opportunity to pursue, things that make you happy. Not everyone has that, I guess, but I think that's an important thing to pay attention to also.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. I think it's great that you mentioned the sort of like passion and energy around this like entrepreneurial space. I think Alia also mentioned it in her introduction, and I think that's definitely something that's like very invigorating as potential students in entrepreneurship. All right, let's go to Jim.
Yeah, so let's see. I guess what I have to share is that just embrace the experience and try to learn from everything as much as you can. So the reason why I say that is it took me like 20 years to figure this out. But when you're dealing with like people and for the time being before AI really starts to take off, and we're still kind of engaging with one another. Kind of the core root of just like what makes people tick, like why would you do something? It's kind of like being really clear about the narrative, really being able to articulate why something is important, why you should do this, why you should buy this. And so I think it's really important for everyone to, or at least I'm going to talk from a product perspective, to be able to be really good at selling. And you're only really able to do that, at least from what I found, to like try to tie this back to my experience with Northwestern, is be able to actually articulate what it is, like why something matters. And so I would say that courses that I look back and I think I really loved was like Introduction to Buddhism. All of my English classes, anything that really challenged me to write a coherent idea and really explain to a stranger why I thought my point was particularly important or interesting. And so I would recommend that you, or at least I'll share like my experience. I definitely learned that writing an idea well, this like ties back to email, being able to sell something, be able to sell an idea very quickly to a stranger or to like a large group of people to say, oh, yes, I'm going to do that without having a meeting. That's going to be very important. To be able to sit in a room across from someone and really articulate like why they should listen, why this is important. And so any classes that help you really think like that, where you're able to make a connection as a human being with someone else that's a complete stranger and find a common accord right away, I would highly recommend you seeking that out, because I can tell you with absolute certainty, econometrics did not help me whatsoever in my life.
All right, we have about 15 minutes left. It doesn't seem like we're getting a ton of questions. So I'm just going to continue with a couple of our prepared questions, and we can jump in with any questions from students at any time. All right, so is there any networking advice that you think would be helpful specifically for your industry? I know that networking is kind of a very scary venture for a lot of students. And particularly in entrepreneurship, where there is maybe a bit less structure in terms of there's not necessarily recruiters to get you into making your own startup per se. What's your experience with networking, and how do you think that's helped you get where you are today? And again, we can start with Trina.
All right. This is a tricky one for me because I'd say I'm probably still a person that hates networking as typically defined. So my advice, if you're in the startup space or if you're interested in tech or product or any of these functions, is just go find a way to get exposure to a startup or a tech company in any capacity that you can. So if that means going to events or meetups that you're kind of are dreading going to, just show up, listen. You never know who you're going to be sitting next to or who you're going to meet, and just force yourself to get in the space. And then two, I'd say just offer up whatever skills you have. So there are things that you are probably inherently good at, things that you've done either at school for the organizations you're involved in, skills you might have picked up in high school or before. And say go work with or for a startup in your spare time, because I think the more you're able to get exposure to the activities that are going on around that startup, the better, and the more versed you'll become in the vocabulary, all way, it might not be the right way, but exposure to ways of doing things, of building, and there's just so much intangible knowledge that you pick up from being around other startup people or people trying to solve a problem and build something. So I didn't do any of this when I was in college, but when I was in business school, I worked for half a dozen different startups. I would go do a project. I worked with engineers when I knew nothing about working with engineers. And it's really by doing that you figure it out. So my networking advice to you is go find whatever avenue or aspect that you can do in. So I'll leave it at that.
All All right, awesome. Thank you. I think that, yeah, that's definitely like a very important and also very compelling facet of entrepreneurship is this sort of like heuristic, like learning by doing tactic. All right, let's move on to Tyler.
Sure. Yeah, I think one maybe like just thing to stick to, and then also I'll tell a quick story that I think is helpful. So first, one thing I would say is always ask for what you want. Or ask for the thing. Don't let someone, don't say no for somebody else. And that was one thing that somebody taught me. I think I was still in college. They said, look, like ask at the end for what you want from that person, right? Whether it's an introduction to another person or another chance to talk, or hey, can I follow up with you if that's okay by email? But if you don't ask, most of the time, folks aren't going to read your mind and know what you're trying to get out of it. And like maybe a similar point there, and maybe this is just me, but like okay, can I pick your brain type, requests were never for me, like sitting on the other side. I don't want to have my brain picked, quite frankly. But what I am willing to do is like, if you send me 3 specific questions, hey, I want to get on the phone and talk for 15 minutes. Here are the 3 things I want to learn about. I, at least personally, am much more likely to say, absolutely, let's talk about those things. So I think the more that you can tell somebody what you're looking to get out of it, like the folks that I think are here are busy, but obviously willing to give time to folks. And so I think that's the last thing before I tell you my quick story, which is like you all are also in a very unique time when people are willing to give you more time than I think they would otherwise. For whatever reason, at least this is how I feel. If you're in college and you're trying to figure out what you want to do and you reach out and say, hey, could we talk for 15 minutes? I feel much more likely to do that and like pay it forward, I think. And so there is something about the time frame that you're in that you kind of have, I think, more leeway to get people on the phone and they want to help. So like, don't be shy, ask and get out there and do it. And so just the last thing, my story is when I was trying to decide whether to start a company or get into tech, I didn't know whether this, starting this company would work out. I tried to go into recruiting for Square, which at the time was a 13-person company. And so I, through a friend of a friend, got somebody on the phone. And I just remember what the guy said. He's like, hey, well, this is a 13-person company. I can tell you're really green. You have no clue what you'd be doing if you were to work here. And that's just not who we need here right now. And I sat on the other side of that phone and I was pretty scared to even get on the phone. And I was like, okay, and like kind of hung up. And I think back on that phone call sometimes, and I think what Srina said rings true, which is like, you kind of at some point have to say, hey, no, I don't think you have an idea about what I can, do. And would you be willing to let me work on a project for free? Or let me send you 3 ideas about why I think your website is not as good as it could be. And you can tell me whether they're good or not. But you kind of have to put the effort forward. No one's going to roll out the red carpet at an early stage company. There's too much going on. And so I think the more you can kind of exhibit your value, again, email someone 17 times with another idea next week, and then a third idea the following week. At some point, they're going to say, shit, this person really wants to work here and add value. Maybe I should pay attention. So I think, there's like a little bit of not taking no for an answer in that story, but I went on to start a company, so I'm fine with what happened with the Square guy. But if I hadn't, I think I would be bummed out that I hadn't like done anything and just let him talk me off the phone. So that's all.
All right, thank you so much for sharing that story. Yeah, it's definitely very powerful to hear from someone who has already found success in starting their own company and sharing some of these like sort of like anecdotes that are very helpful for me, at least, to hear like a concrete example of sort of like not taking no for an answer, persevering. I think you also had a great point about seizing this opportunity of being someone in college to take, I guess, people's willingness to help you out and just get that conversation started. All right, I hate to rush everyone. It seems like we only have a few, like 7 more minutes left in this session. It seems like we do have a question from the audience. Maybe we can just wrap up this question really quickly with Jin and Alia, and then we can address that question.
Oh, so you want me to answer or respond to the same question, the networking one?
Yeah, I think,
okay.
yeah, we can
I'll
finish
try to
up
keep
this
it super quick because there were some great points. Yes, 100% be tenacious, but also have your intent ready to go, like why you need to talk to somebody. I can tell you as a builder, like former startup founder, other startup founders, other builders love to talk about what they built. It's like talking about their children. And so if you can find that common accord, do it. I'll give you also a quick story. I was out hustling, trying to like learn as much as I could, but also make inroads to try to get more support and partnerships for my search engine startup going. I ended up pinging Nick Kokonis, who is the owner of Alinea, and was just like constantly like pelting him with emails. And he's just like, and he responded one day, he's like, oh, come to my house at this time. And so I showed up, he let me into his beautiful house. Like, of course, it's like immaculate. And we just sat down at his dining room table and he shows me the prototype to his company called Talk, which is like a reservation app that he sold. And I was showing him my app and we just ended up just sharing notes. And he just told me that I passed his test of just like completely stonewalling someone until they prove themselves to him. And so please do that. Don't take no for an answer, but always have your intent ready and try to find that common ground.
All right, awesome. Thank you for that insight. Definitely very important lessons to take away. And finally, Alia, would love to hear your take on this question.
Yeah, I'll be really fast. I think the points brought up are really good ones. Stay in touch with the people that you know. I think networking is not only about like the people who you expand your network to and outreach to, but it's also about your coworkers, your colleagues, the people you go to class with, your peers. Like those are the people who are going to do cool things later, and you want to be in touch with them. I think the only other thing is, I think along with the intention, there's also focus. So like I've found that focusing on a few things and being tenacious about those few things have served me better than more of a numbers or sales game, where it's like, I'm going to LinkedIn 5,000, I'll have a goal to LinkedIn 500 people and see what sticks. Like what's worked a lot better is like, I'm going to look at these 5 companies and I'm going to focus all my energy on these 5 companies.
All right. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I think definitely 2 takeaways are just like being mindful of like the people that are in school with us right now, and also I guess thinking about like quality over quantity when it comes to like networking and finding those stakeholders and connections. All right. Again, sorry for the rush. I'm going to pass it over to our other moderator, Prina. I think she has a question from the audience.
So this one is kind of specific actually, but it says, did any of our panelists live in the Ayers CCI residential college during their time at Northwestern? And if so, how did living on campus within a career-oriented community impact their college experience? Did anyone by chance live in Ayers CCI? No. Okay. Do you maybe jealous? Okay. I guess it's just were there any experiences with like career-oriented activities on campus that impacted your college experience? Would anyone say?
I'll jump in with a quick one. When I was in school, like getting any type of courses through Kellogg, where it was virtually impossible, like people were just like piling in, trying to get in. And so that was actually like a lot of fun to try to compete and get into a certain course where you get to learn and feel like you're in a business school environment. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I would just echo the NSH experience again, and similar to what Jin mentioned, we actually had some Kellogg students on our like board, and I remember they would help us prep for the board meetings, and I thought the Kellogg people were like gods. I was like, just tell me everything you know about business and let me spend down, hang out with you more. But obviously that's not the case, but they have had some real world experience and they are on campus and they are accessible to you as students. So if you are interested in entrepreneurship and business, like Kellogg is an incredible resource with a lot of driven, smart people that you can tap into.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for offering that advice too, and for all the students who are here right now, just like coming to this kind of event and hearing from alumni who've had these experiences and are able to offer their advice is really helpful. Sophia, anything else?
Nothing else from me. If you want to just wrap us up, and I think we can head back to the main room after some closing remarks. Would be great.